Hi guys, how's it going? It's a lot. I'm checking. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I have finally maxed out my TFSA for the first time ever. Last year I was so super close, but I didn't get to max it out. I think when the tax year ended, I was on 30,000 somewhere there, and then this year I managed to max it out before the tax year ends. The tax year ends on February of every year, and I maxed out my TFSA in October. And honestly, I really feel like this is huge for me because at the beginning of the year, whenever I do my financial goals list, I actually have maxed out my TFSA as the number one on the list because it is a priority, right? And doing it in 8 months is very huge for me. And given the fact that from my salary, I am able to save and invest 3,000 every single month. So from that 3,000, I take 2,000 and I put it into my TFSA. So considering that 2,000 only, it was going to take me 18 months to max out my TFSA. But then whenever that I get an extra income, my side money, I was putting it all in the TFSA because it is my priority, right? And it's a priority to me because I understand how heavy tax is, to be taxed all the time when you receive dividends or when you sell your shares is a lot. And on dividends tax, that 20% is too much, right? And unfortunately, us who love dividends actually get to be aimed at all the time with taxes because whenever you get your dividends, they're taking 20%. If you get your dividends today, tomorrow, whenever, SARS want the 20%. And if you think about it, that is a lot. And simply because you are receiving 100 rands in dividends, 20 rands in dividends, you feel like those 2 rands and 20 rands are not a lot. Imagine if you were to receive 100,000 in dividends, SARS wants 20,000 of your money. That is a lot. So don't look at it from a mere fact that you feel like 5 rands is less, 10 rands is less, and then you are okay with just having all your money in that red account. If you're on easy equities, we have the TFSA and that ZA account. So don't be okay with having all your holdings in that ZA account. So for me, I just invest in ETFs in the TFSA because I want to take advantage of the tax benefits because I understand how heavy tax is. And in that account, actually, whenever I receive my dividends, SARS is not touching my money, right? That's how I actually get to max out my TFSA a bit quicker because I focus more on it and I contribute so much into it. And looking at how this year was for me financially, I think when we were around your May there, like from May until September, it was just a lot. It was a lot, and I did not see how I was going to max out my TFSA before February, right? Because I was just, whenever I plan about my investments and savings, I look at what my salary affords me to save and invest because I know that that is guaranteed income, right? But on the side, I'm just like, oh, okay, I may not make money this month and make money the next, so I don't really rely too much on it. But whenever it comes, I just take hold of it and I put it in my TFSA, and that's how I actually got to max out my TFSA in 8 months. And when I was just a few runs away from maxing out my TFSA, I was so super confused because I was like, oh my goodness, once I max this out, what am I going to do? Because I have so much of my money in most of my ETFs and the ones that I think are quality in my TFSA. And I'm like, do I have to buy the very same ETFs in the ZA account? Do I not? Is it a good move and all of that? So for the longest time, I was just like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm going to do from this point onwards. Also because I don't want my portfolio to have so much of individual companies because they are so super risky, right? I don't really like them like that. So for me, it's all about ETFs. I do have individual stocks, but yeah, most of my money is in my ETFs, right? And what I've actually got to realize also is that we are investing to make money. And I cannot just go and decide to buy any ETF simply because I now want to add ETFs in my ZA account. So I was like, oh my goodness, do I still buy your S&Ps, your NASDAQ? What am I doing, right? And then I finally decided that, you know what, I have to go and find some of the quality growth ETFs. And for me, quality is an ETF that returns at least 20% a year. If I'm going to invest in something and for me it's quality, it has to grow my money by 20% a year, right? So I added the MSCI US for now. That is the only ETF that I have added, and I've added 2 more stocks, growth stocks for that matter, and I'm just continuing to invest in those 3 holdings that I've added and my other individual companies that I've always had in my red account. And another thing that I did also was to focus on my US stock portfolio. For the longest time, I just had Nvidia. I bought Nvidia, I bought JP, and I bought, what else? And I had one ETF, I forgot its name, right? So I was like, okay, fine. This is time for me to actually focus on this US portfolio because I now have a bit of flexibility to invest more, to focus more into these portfolios, because for the longest time I had prioritized the TFSA. Now that it's mixed out, let me move on to another portfolio, like invest in other countries, right? Because the thing is, and this is just me, right? I don't like having little money in these holdings. I'm like, okay, fine. If I have 100 rands to invest, I'd rather just have one ETF that I'm going to invest 100 rands in, and I'm okay. Instead of taking it and splitting it amongst 10 ETFs or 10 individual stocks. I don't like that. I know we have the privilege of fractional investing, but I'm not really on it that much. So now that I mixed up my TFSA, I am now focusing on my US stock portfolio because I actually want to, you know, have it as my second largest compared to my ZA account. And simply because companies and ETFs in the US stock market, they tend to perform better. And our SA companies, I'm not saying they're not performing better, but I'm just saying the US stock market tend to do better than the SA stock market. That is why I am just going to focus more on my USD, and then the ZA account is going to follow. That is my plan until next year when the tax year starts again. And then I now can invest in my TFSA. So in my USD portfolio, I have added 2 ETFs and a 1 dividend stock. The 2 ETFs are for growth, and then there's 1 dividend stock, right? And I'm just realizing that when I'm talking about the holdings that I've added are more on growth. And guys, it's because I do love dividends, but growth investing beats dividends, right? And I just feel like, okay, most of my money in my TFSA is in my DVETF, right? And then now most of my money also in my ZA account is also in my dividend stocks because I have Yotungela, Exaro, Storage. I only have Premier Group at 3% dividend yield that I would say it's more on growth a bit. So most of my money is actually in dividend stocks. So now I'm just trying to have a balance in my portfolio where I have enough growth stocks and enough dividend stocks. So now when I'm adding these companies and ETFs, I'm just focusing on the ones that I know that are going to give me growth, because here's the thing. You can have a company that is going to give you a dividend of 10% yield, somewhere there, right? And that comes with little to no growth. And then you can have an ETF that is going to give you 20% capital growth. That ETF is actually beating your dividend company or ETF, right? That is just the sad truth. But I still love dividends, guys. I still invest for dividends big time. But just for now, I'm like, okay, let me just try out to balance my portfolio with growth ETFs and stocks. So that's where my focus in after I have mixed out my TFSA. So in my TFSA, I have received a total of 1.5 in dividends so far, and it's actually a lot. Like 1.5 is like, this is enough. Like, I know this is per annum because from here I'm going to receive dividends in January in my TFSA. I just think it's still enough given the fact that most of my ETFs are giving me 3% in dividends, you know, and I only have the Zetrix DB that is at 10%, and then the rest are below. No, there's actually one that is at 6 to 7%, and then the rest are on 3%. So my TFSA, in as much as if I look at it individually, like this ETFs individually, most of my money is in my DV ETF, but in aggregate, most of my money is in growth ETFs because I have your S&P, the FMB 1.2, Nasdaq, they kept all share in the top 40. So like those ETFs are more on the growth side than on the dividend side. So most of my money in total in growth ETFs. That is why my dividends for this year so far is only 1.5, which I think it's still a lot. I mean, I still want more, but 1.5 is actually very much enough. And how the TFSA works is that your dividends actually do not count as deposits. They don't increase your contributions. They don't affect that limit. The 36,000 limit is not affected by your dividends because dividends are not deposits. Only deposits where you take your money from your savings account or whatever, put it into the TFSA, that is a contribution and that reduces your limit for that year or for a lifetime. So as for dividends, you don't have to stress if now they're going to reduce your limit because they are not going to. From now, as I've said, I'm going to be paid in January and maybe I'll do an update in Jan. I don't know, we'll see. And honestly, I just think it's best if we prioritize our TFSA because that is us actually saving in taxes by investing in the TFSA. You know, like I've said, that 20% that you think is not too much simply because you're only receiving 20 rands, 2 rands in dividends, and they're only taking like your 80 cents. It's actually, it's still a lot. Like 20% is so much for SARS to just take it from you if you can avoid it legally, right? So let's prioritize investing in our TFSA so you can take advantage of our tax benefits. And that's it on today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you next weekend on my next video. Bye.